Ahoy! Cyclone at the helm with the Varan figure by Trendmasters. As per usual, the history will be held until after the showcase. This figure stands at about 5 inches tall and is molded in a maroon plastic. Now when it comes to the sculpt, you have to remember this is a Trendmasters figure. In other words, the design is going to be heavily stylized. With that in mind, I think the sculpt is pretty well done. It's a little simple, but I feel they really nailed everything they needed to. No one who knows their Daikaiju is going to look at this and not recognize the character, in spite of its strange colors and lack of his rather iconic colossal nose. As for the paint, it's mostly limited to that bone color for every pointy part on his body, including his nails, spines, teeth, and the shiny purple used for his chest and back. And Monster Arts collectors will be happy to hear those magic words, "No paint slop." The articulation is standard for a toy from this time, with rotation at the head, the arms, tail, and the thighs can swivel forward as far as the sculpt allows. It's not all clear skies for this figure though. Unfortunately, the sculpt is hindered by a necessary evil: screws. Like any toy from our childhoods that featured lights and sounds, Varan's body is just full of holes. Oh yes, you heard correctly, that conspicuous nipple on the center of his chest is in fact a button. That, when pressed, has Varan emit a sound reminiscent of Batra/Rodan, which to Trendmasters' credit is not that far off from how he actually sounded. From what I remember, his roar was kind of in between Godzilla's and Rodan's. But good job! Earlier, I did happen to mention that there wasn't any paint slop. I wasn't exactly lying, but there is a bit of an issue on this figure. If you hadn't noticed yet, one of the toes is just not painted at all. Now I received it like this. It came straight from the factory with one of his toes just completely unpainted. I'm not exactly an expert on malfunctions in factories, but it just baffles me. It's not that the toe is painted poorly. It's not that most of the figure's not painted, and it's not that all the toes are not painted or something. How does only one of the toes not get painted? I don't understand how that even happens. So, unfortunately, I have to kind of dock some points, I suppose, from Trendmasters for this. I'm going to assume most of the figures don't have this, but it's not like I've ever owned more than one of this variant, so I really can't confirm whether I'm the only one that's ever had this problem. But there it is. As you can see, it's just missing paint completely. Now let's sail onto the history of this here veritable vermin. The film Varan has an interesting history in and of itself, but let's start with the star. Varan is an ancient deity that just so happens to look like a bipedal version of one of those iguanas with the cardboard spine strapped to them in the Lost World. What really makes him stick out, compared to most of the monsters from this time, is that much like a flying squirrel, Varan could glide through the air using this membrane between his arms. While the film itself is no masterpiece in its original unaltered format, the English dubbed version is an abhorrent work that I would not even keep in the brig of our ship. Now quite frankly, I really don't remember very much about this film. I've seen it, I even own it, but the contents in my mind are just simply not there. Ignoring the plot for a second, let's focus on the actual film's history. As I'm sure most of you are aware, back when this movie released, American distributors always thought it necessary to tweak the movie to make it more easily digestible for our region's audience. Sometimes these were subtle, simple music changes, a joke here or there altered, and other times they would just completely change the plot of the movie, slapping in footage of their own American protagonist in between the scenes. Varan, or as in the US, Varan the Unbelievable, which is actually a pretty rad name, had just about the entire movie changed. American protagonist, changes in the plot, and of course removal of integral monster footage. This film really drew the short straw when it came to its localization. The story is something like, there's some mystical lake, and an American is like, I have to blow up the lake. The natives don't like that, but he's like, you don't understand. I'm an American, so I have to blow up the lake. The explosion makes a monster come out, and the American comes to the conclusion that the only way to kill the monster is to blow up the lake. Again, the natives don't like it, but he saves the day and proves that you should never trust uncultured natives. USA! USA! Now let's sail on to the seaworthiness test. Ooh, now that is really a sight for sore eyes. Finally, a figure to truly demonstrate the full potential of the absolute necessity for your collection to be seaworthy. but I suppose it makes sense after all. He did both live and die in the sea. Well, really, it was more of a lake, but considering the geographical region, it was probably part of the sea during the Paleogene era, so good enough!
So let it be said, so let it be sailed.
See you at the next port.